All right, star of the show, Palantir. Last time we interviewed you, which was awesome, this is like March, you came onto our Palantir Weekly podcast and you were like, guys, I just don't get it. Like, it's cool. I think the valuation's amazing, but I just don't know what the hell this is. I'm not buying it. Since then till like 6 months later, what has changed? What have you kind of thought about when it comes to Palantir?
Product demos on their YouTube page helped me immensely in just understanding the product that the company has and why this can be impactful for other companies and why somebody should use their software. I think that was the biggest thing that kind of helped finish it for me. And then I think also the valuation coming down so much, $7 and $14 billion market cap or so,
yeah.
With $2 billion plus of cash and no debt. Okay. The risk reward is just there for me. It's like, I don't,
especially you're starting your position at $7 or $8 or whatever.
Yeah.
A lot of Palantir people are at 25 because that's just how it was.
No, exactly. And that's the thing that's tough with stocks is it's like one person could make a fortune on a stock because they got in at the right price. The other person's like, maybe in 5 years I'll make a fortune on this stock.
Right.
It's like no different than the chef. If the chef works out and goes to 15 over the coming years, if somebody buys it at 5, they're happy. My cost basis might be $13, $15. So I might just barely be getting to break even at that point. Right. Same thing with the Palantir, right? So yeah, I think the product demos helped in a meaningful way. Valuation coming down in a meaningful way. Listen to more conference calls. Understanding Snowflake a little better in kind of their opportunity. And the most underrated number in the last conference or in the last earnings that I thought just a lot of people didn't pay attention to was U.S. commercial.
Yeah.
And everybody dogged that earnings. Like if Palantir put up the worst quarter in the world. If I recall, U.S. commercial grew 120%.
Yep.
Which I don't think there's another software company out there that could grow U.S. commercial 120%. That's a phenomenal number. Everybody got so caught up on the top line number just because of government was hurt in the short term. And it's like, that's just part of the story.
Yeah.
So, the reason I'm in Palantir is not really because of the government side. That's a cool cherry on top. For me, it's about the U.S. commercial and hopefully over time, massive amounts of big companies using Palantir software for their companies. And, we'll see how they adapt their business model over time. Maybe they go more AWS type route in terms of
which is
free
their
trial.
Vision,
Yeah. And you guys have spoke about this with, I know on your I don't want to call it the podcast, but you do it with the other gentlemen. I watch a lot of your guys' episodes and you talk about, hey, what if they just made it free at first? Or, and then kind of you graduated up the ranks,
right?
Which I think is a whole other level that they might potentially go down over time. So
how do you feel about Alex Karp?
Yeah, Alex Karp, my opinion hasn't really changed about him. I've always felt like he's, talks too much philosophy and not enough about the stock, and I think people really want to hear him talk about the stock. And, if he's on for a 15-minute interview, you got maybe a minute of the stock and 14 minutes of what's going on in the world, geopolitical type stuff, right? So I think that's just him. And you just have to kind of deal with that. I think he also sells really good, subliminally. And I don't think a lot of people even pick up on that. When he's talking about Palantir's helping save lives, when he's talking about, it's helping small countries fight off big countries and things like that, it's really powerful on a subliminal level if you're a Fortune 500 CEO and you're like, man, if this company's data and what they're doing is helping, a country fight a war, oh gosh, it could probably potentially help my business. I should at least take it serious, which for Palantir, that's all you can ask for is for folks to take you serious and consider using your product or seeing about it and things like that.
You said you're not in it too much for the government, but the CEO Karp obviously quite literally is always talking about the saving of Western values and democratic norms and the fragility of democracy. Does any of that stuff mean anything to you when you hear him say that stuff? Is it just like, all right, it's whatever, but like stock-based compensation, I want to hear about that?
I think it's important subjects. I think he just probably talks about it too much, to be honest. But like I said, you're going to have faults with every CEO, and things that you're like, oh, can they just talk about this more? I think at least Karp has to understand on earnings calls, dude, throw all this philosophical stuff out the window. Just focus on the stock. If you want to go on CNBC and talk and do a 30-minute interview and talk about big picture stuff and what's going on in the world, do that. But on earnings call, if you find yourself going that way, Karp, bring it back, man. Bring it back and focus on the stock, what's going on with the business model, because that's what people want to hear about on an earnings call.
Right.
You know, we already heard your big philosophy stuff many times.
It's so divided in the community because it's like people like me love the philosophy stuff because I took philosophy in college and high school. So I love it. And then there's other people that are just like, okay, I just want to know about the stock. And he tries to intermingle them, but a lot of times it leans more towards philosophy because he has a PhD in philosophy.
Yeah.
And he's trusting people will love the company because of the philosophy, when in reality, a lot of people might not. You know?
Yeah. Well, and I mean, you're so into the Palantir community. I would love to hear from your perspective on what you see from most people in regards to that.
There is a core group of people that love it. Like, so for me, CodeStrap, shout out to him. He understands a lot about the concepts of freedom and democracy, and we're able to really talk about that stuff. And he loves Palantir because it forces us to have these discussions. But I would say the far majority of people just want to hear about the stock, and the far majority of people just want to hear about the business.
Yeah.
I do think a lot of people bought into it because of his crazy vision, but now because the stock has been plummeted, they want to hear about how they're going to get their money back.
Yeah.
And so, but I think Carp is Carp, and he doesn't care. And he believes that if you believe in Palantir, give us 5 years. And
you know what? That's the thing that bothers me. Because people now, because the stock's down big, all of a sudden want him to change this. And I'm like, this is the same Carp from a year ago. He didn't change. Yep. I think it's just people, maybe at that time, stock was doing fine. They were looking at it with, I don't know, what do they say, rose-colored glasses or whatever. And now all of a sudden stock's down big and they're like, oh, I want Carp to change. It's like, dude, that's just who he is.
Right.
So, you know, from that perspective. But by the way, I want to speak on the Palantir community for a second. I haven't seen as intelligent of a community build around a stock since Tesla in regards to Palantir. I've been extremely impressed with the community. I think that the amount of high-level thinkers there is unparalleled other than when I saw it with Tesla back in the day. And that's one of the other reasons that's given me a lot of conviction with Palantir. And just one of many reasons that gave me conviction with Tesla back in the day was I'm like, man, there's a lot of freaking really smart people that are thinking about this stock. And
it was my initial thing too, because I started interviewing Sean from InvestLive, you know him, and Sachin and Chris and all these, and CodeStrap. There's so many different people, and I got the technical people, I got the people who work in data and analytics sales every day. I've got the more philosophical, and I'm getting all this insight, and I'm like, everyone's thinking about the stock, and either we're all dead wrong or we all collectively crowdsourced information to hopefully have somewhat of a return on this company.
Yeah.
And a lot of communities on YouTube don't have. A lot of stocks don't have that community. I mean, SoFi has a nice community, Tesla, obviously, but it's hard to find other communities.
It really is. And, you know, with the funny thing with Tesla, and I'll say a little different than Palantir, is Tesla had a lot of smart short sellers as well. Yes. And they, I mean, obviously they lost a fortune, so they might not be so smart after all. That's true. But I mean, you know, there's Michael Burry and all those folks shorted that stock. And it was like, it's just amazing how many intellectual people it collected on both sides of it, from the Ron Barons to, you know, the
Gordon Johnsons.
Yes. Yeah. And the, you know, Jim Chanos was obviously playing on the other side. And, you know, I haven't really seen that on Palantir from the short side. I just seen a really, in my opinion, intelligent community on the long side. So Palantir just might not be as interesting of a short because you're kind of looking at it as a short. And it's like, well, they're not going out of business. With Tesla, I think that was the thing that attracted people, the shorts, was, oh my gosh, they're losing so much money. Look at how bad their cash flows are. With Palantir, it's like, okay, they got the stock-based compensation. Their market cap's like $14 billion. They got $2 billion in cash, no debt. You know, they're growing, like, and they're a SaaS business. So over time, it's going to be a straight profit machine. What do you got there? So I think that's why it hasn't really attracted the shorts as much as Tesla did back in the day.
How much does Palantir of the portfolio? Is it
very small
very
now?
Small still.
Yeah, I probably have, gosh, I don't know. Maybe I have like 20 or 30K in Palantir. Yeah. So, but I want to build it. Man, it might be a little bit more than that, but I want to build it to like 100. I would love to build it to like 100K position, and I should have at least the rest of this year to do it.
Any thoughts on Thiel in Palantir's vision 0 to 1? Any conviction that allowed you, as he's the co-founder of it?
No, actually, that's 0% of the reasons why I'm in it. And I know you guys have spoken about that book a lot. I would love to just hear you for a second. Like, what about that book makes it so special? Because I've heard you guys speak about
on the
it
book a lot.
Several times.
It's the one line he had which framed the entire book and really inspired a generation of like thoughts when it comes to startups. And obviously I'm building a startup, so it's influential to me, which is the concept of competition being for losers. So the idea is like Google search eliminated all their competition because they created the best search engine in the world. And contrary to what the government and everyone thinks, monopolies are good because it means you have this you have this differentiated advantage that the rest of the world can't catch up to. Whereas an airline, which is the example he uses, has a lot of competition, Southwest, United, and as a result of all that competition, it shrinks your margins and it gives you a shitty airplane business where you're going to fill up seats, but there's not going to be that profitable. So not having competition actually allows you to monopolize an industry. Now, the problem is, how do you build a product that is so unique and differentiated, like Google's search algorithm, that it beats Yahoo, that it beats Ask.com, and it goes from 0 to 1? And it eliminates all the competition. And so what the thesis is on Palantir is they have a differentiated data analytics technology that uses machine learning, AI at such a unique level that the Snowflakes of the world, the Databricks of the world aren't necessarily doing that, which is why they could go from 0 to 1, which means an exponential return if they have that differentiated of a technology. The problem is their sales sucks right now. And they can't get the world to understand that technology. As per their earnings, they're not growing exponentially. And so if that happens, it's a 0 to 1 story and their tech goes crazy and this is a great return. If it doesn't, then it doesn't.
Yeah. And, for the people that, trip off the short-term earnings, which once again, that was really held back by government in Europe, right? Yeah. Remember, I remember, what quarter was it? Tesla put up this one quarter, I think it was in 2019. And it was so trash, man. They grew.
I think it was Q3 because the stock dropped to 170 and I started buying it.
Yeah.
And there was a report that said it's going to $10.
Yeah.
Specifically $10. This is by Morgan Stanley.
Yeah. Yeah. And
because that was May, I started buying it in 2019.
Yeah.
I sold it in October. So
dang. Okay. It happens. Yeah, I know a lot of people. That's other. I'm getting off on too many different subjects, but I think people can learn from Tesla because a lot of people took profits way too soon. Because they were like, oh my gosh, it went up 50%. It doubled. I'm out. And they missed the 1,000%. They missed the 2,000%, unfortunately.
Yep.
So, which is where you get the life-changing money. It's the 50% is like, okay, I'm doing well for myself. The 2,000 is like life-changing, right? Yeah. Right. So, or just do some big stuff. But in Palantir, I'm trying to remember. Oh yeah. So Tesla put up this garbage quarter. Revenue on a quarter over quarter basis was down billions of dollars, I remember. And people freaked out.
Which means they were not growing quarter over quarter.
And I just looked at it and I'm like, dude, the product is freaking great. People are going to come to this. Don't worry about it. And obviously things worked out over time. At the end of the day, if you got a great product, it's going to work out. And that's
what Karp thinks. He thinks the product they spent 18 years developing is so good, and obviously it's being used in Ukraine. They publicly admitted it, that should be enough to sell it. The problem is Tesla's a consumer product where the product can sell itself. Software never sells itself.
It's true, yeah.
Like it's networking, B2B, politics, getting to the C-suite executives. Yep. So I think that's the thing the community is struggling with is like, we really do believe through product demos and talking to technical people, the product is differentiated. Can they sell it? That's the hard part, and we'll figure that out.
By the way, I would love to ask you a question here.
Yes.
Who do you view as more of if you do view either as competition, who's more competition? Is it Databricks or is it Snowflake, in your opinion, for Palantir?
I would say it might not be neither. It might be Microsoft, just because they can replicate the business intelligence Palantir offers, maybe even at 30% of the quality, and then just have the distribution because they have all the networking. Now, in general, Snowflake is more sort of data storage and situating the data, not analytically explaining the data at the type of level Palantir is. They can do something like that, but not at Palantir's level.
Yeah.
So Databricks, I think, would be more direct competition. I think that's what CodeStrap has talked about as well.
Okay.
But Microsoft is like that canary in the coal mine that might actually just say, hey, here's our new Palantir-esque product. You guys already buy Teams from us. We'll give you this on top of it for like 20% off. Why would you pay Palantir $2 million for this? Like, pay us $200,000. And so I guess we'll see what happens from there.
Yeah, I know that's always the tough part.
Karp has talked about Snowflake offering a product. He literally said the words that will be gone in like 5 to 6 years because it's this out of the box, literally software as a service that you just set up and then it's boom. Yeah, he's talked about building a product that will last decades because the tech is that differentiated. The question is, if no one knows that the tech exists, do you make money off of it? And so that's what we're struggling with as a community right now.
Yeah, that makes sense.